Is Chris Paul a top 10 point guard of all time? Welcome into Clippers Talk.
Here we go, Clips fans.
Clippers Talk with Adam Osland. After every game, download every pod. Clippers Talk's the name. He's a basketball talking golden god.
New episodes after every game on demand.
Follow Clippers Talk wherever you get your podcasts. Clippers.
Welcome into the show. New and improved. I think the main reason I wanted to do a show today is not to hate on Kendrick Perkins for hating on the Clippers and CP3, but just because new lighting, new camera, wanted to test it out, wanted to see how things looked as I'm caught in 4K since so many people were complaining about the quality of the video, even though mainly what's important here is the audio. But I get it because now I'm looking at my chair rubbing up against the wall and how much this dark spot has continued to worsen. And I'm like, I got to paint over this now. The camera looks too good. Do you guys like it? Does it work for you? Is this what you were waiting for? I thought I was going to have to buy like a new laptop or a Chromebook just to get a new camera. And then I was like, wait, what if I just buy the camera and attach it to my Chromebook, since it's got an Intel Core i5 10th generation, whatever the F, it can probably power this thing. So far, so good. I have a ring light. It's not that hard to have a much nicer setup. So I hope you guys are appreciating the production costs here. It's actually more expensive than the money they put into Happy Gilmore 2. Okay, I have to let that go. I know Justin Russo liked it. He also likes like every Fast and the Furious movie. He's just, he just wants to be entertained, I think, is that type of thing. And I get it. Different strokes for different folks. Pardon the pun, the hockey and golf. It's Happy Gilmore, so it's both. But yes, strokes for golf. All right. Appreciate you guys in here. I want to get down into the nitty gritty on if Chris Paul is a top 10 point guard of all time, because it was brought up recently by Kendrick Perkins, first on the Road Trippin' show with Richard Jefferson. Jay Bose is appreciating the production value here. It's some handmade quality shit. To quote the first Happy Gilmore. Okay, not exactly, but I got this Insta360 camera, and it's pretty nice. Tuka, do you want to show off? Do you? Oh shit. Okay, I can't do it right now. The light almost came down. Ooh. Oh, your girl has been laughing at how hard I've been going after Happy Gilmore 2 on here. Appreciate that. I hope she laughed more from my reviews of it than the actual movie itself. They won't stop. Not so subtle shots will continue to be taken. Like I said, Christoph Waltz and Django Unchained. I'm sorry. I couldn't help it. Is that the line? He shoots Leo and starts the big gunfight. The Tupac song goes off. Movie was kind of downhill after that. Still good, though. Tarantino is still top notch. In fact, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, that may be top 3 for me with him. Maybe top 2. Is CP3 top 10? I swear to God, Tuka, if you chew through this new wiring system I got, don't do it. Don't do it. I just put this together. Took a lot of time to do this. All right. So I pulled some clips. Yeah, you must really hate that movie. I'm not the only one. Go look up the reviews on YouTube. Plenty of people with taste understand how distasteful that movie was. Who else do we got? Unhappy Gilmore, people are saying. Crappy Gilmore, I've heard that. That's the type of joke they'd make in that movie. There's so much cringe and unfunny setups and jokes that just don't work at all. Okay. Enough. Speaking of cringe, let's talk about Kendrick Perkins. So it seems like he's had kind of an axe to grind against the Clippers for a while. I don't know where this is coming from. I think I have an idea, and I'll tell you about that here in a little bit. But I want to go through Kendrick Perkins here and what his analysis has been of this Clippers offseason, the way he's been mocking them, and then we'll get to his hot take that CP3 is not a top 10 point guard of all time. And I'll tell you some of the guys I'm taking off his list to put CP3 on. So let's start with, and this is 6 minutes of Kendrick Perkins. I know it's a lot, but it has to be done. Why? Because I want to show off my new camera, guys. Look at this. You see my dimples. All right, here we go. Let me see if I can share the screen with you. Kendrick Perkins on the Clippers offseason.
Congratulations.
How did I screw it up that quickly? Like, I made it 2 seconds in. Ow, ow, ow. Before Tuka started biting me, and I lost my place. I got it now. Here we go.
The Steve Ballmer and the Los Angeles Clippers.
Okay, apparently I can't minimize it. If I minimize it, it stops. I actually downloaded this. I will, eject it immediately and put it into the trash bin of my Chromebook after I'm done here. But I thought this would work better than just streaming it. Like I'm already streaming enough stuff here. Gosh, freaking. All right, Kendrick Perkins.
Clippers, they have officially become the nursing home for the NBA for the players that are on the back end of their career. No, I'm serious, because if we think that this is about to move the needle for the Clippers for us being a competitor, not just a title contender, but competing in the tough Western Conference, it's not. And I get it. Chris Paul, he brings great value, whether he's playing or whether he's on the bench being an extension of Ty Lue. But when I look at their roster, I look at a guy like Dunn. Yes, he's a guy that could defend at a high level, but the Clippers look old. And they still, to me, have a problem at that wing position when it comes down to depth from guys that could compete and play at a high level on the defensive side of things. Offensively, they got enough to put up points. They're going to have a good regular season. But when it comes down to them competing in the Western Conference, especially when they get postseason time, can they compete with the likes of a Houston, OKC, Denver, even the Lakers now? I just don't see.
20 points per game.
Okay, so he starts there, or the thing that I would take issue with right away is Kendrick Perkins saying they don't have wing depth, they don't have defense. Did he watch the team at all last season? They were third defensively overall. They have DJ still, Derrick Jones Jr. They have Chris Dunn still. They have Kawhi. They have Ivica Zubac. He's talking specifically of wing guys. So Batum, DJ, Dunn, Kawhi can all guard at a very high level. That's just false. It seems like he's just looking for a reason to go after the Clippers here. And yeah, I put Tuka in the other room. That was a bad kitty. Can you see on the 4K camera? My hand? I'm in pain here. Third best defense last season. Yes, D. Damari. Do a little bit of research here. I see you guys are excited with the picture quality. I think the sound is already pretty good with this headset. It's not exactly THX, but it's adequate for an at-home microphone. So back to Kendrick Perkins. Now he's going to hate on the Bradley Beal signing.
Per game in consecutive seasons since 2015-2016, those 2 seasons, 2014 through 2016. With that in mind, Herc, what does the addition of Bradley Beal do for the Los Angeles Clippers?
Nothing. Nothing. I mean, like, I'm just being real here, right? Like, we was talking about maybe 4 years ago, we had Bradley Beal in the conversation with the likes of a Devin Booker, Jay.
I love I'm just being real here. Real uninformed. Like, come on.
Like, I'm just being real here, right? Like, you know, we was talking about maybe 4 years ago, we had Bradley Beal in the conversation with the likes of a Devin Booker, Jaylen Brown, Donovan Mitchell when it comes down to the two-guard position. But when you look at the Clippers and you look at who they have, they're not doing nothing but getting older. And I know that they got John Collins from the Utah Jazz, but when you look at what teams have done this offseason, the teams that are trying to go get it, they have youth, they have athleticism, they have depth at the wing position that could play both ways. I don't trust that the Clippers don't have that. Yeah, you bring back James Harden, who's going to do great in the regular season. You bring back Kawhi Leonard.
That was hate. He's had an axe to grind against James Harden for a while. He's been going hard at him since he's been a Clipper.
Position that could play both ways. I don't trust that the Clippers don't have that. Yeah, you bring back James Harden, who's going to do great in the regular season. You bring back Kawhi Leonard, who shows signs of life towards the end of the season that he could be healthy, but we still don't know, right? He's always had a question mark. The only bright spot, in my opinion, on this squad has been Big Zubac, right?
The only bright spot on this squad has been Big Zubac, Big Zoo. The only bright spot? Are you kidding me? Don't get me wrong. You're not going to find many bigger fans of Ivica Zubac than me. And he is a defensive, well, he used to be back in his playing days. He was a big man, and he was a real impactful player for the Boston Celtics. Kendrick Perkins, so I can see why he would appreciate Ivica Zubac, but you can't say the only bright spot. That's ridiculous.
Big Zubac, who had an impressive season last year, went toe-to-toe with Jokic last postseason in the 7-game series and held his own. So when I look at the Clippers, they're going to be a top 8 seed in the Western Conference. They're going to be 8 in somewhere along those lines. But
that's it? Just top 8? He couldn't say top 4, top 6, top 8, meaning they could still be in the play-in if they're top 8? Really?
They're not better than OKC. They're not better than Dallas. They're not better.
Okay, they're not better than Dallas. Now, granted, this was before they signed CP3 officially. This was after Bradley Beal. So they had already gotten Brook Lopez, John Collins, and Bradley Beal up to this point. There were plenty of murmurs they were getting CP3, so maybe he still thinks Dallas is better than them. But that's a pretty wild statement there, I think.
In the Western Conference, they're going to be 8 in somewhere along those lines. But they're not better than OKC. They're not better than Dallas. They're not better than Denver. They're not better than Golden State. So again, Bradley Beal.
Not better than Golden State. They beat them 4 times last year. They were a higher seed. The Warriors got out of the first round because they got Houston. The Warriors are also an old team. Why is nobody talking about that? It's all about the Clippers being the retirement nursing home, as Kendrick Perkins says. We're not saving any of that energy for Golden State? Come on.
Lines, but they're not better than OKC. They're not better than Dallas. They're not better than Denver. They're not better than Golden State. So again, Bradley Beal on this squad becoming the 4th option behind James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, and Big Zubac.
Okay, he at least got that part right. He's behind all those 3 guys: Kawhi, James Harden, and Ivica Zubac. Bradley Beal should be 4th in the pecking order. Zubac better be 3rd still. That is very important to me.
Better than Golden State. So again, Bradley Beal on this squad becoming the 4th option behind James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, and Big Zubac. I mean, to be honest, doesn't really do nothing for me. It doesn't move the needle. It shouldn't have been breaking news. It should have just been NBA news.
He is funny and entertaining, and overall, I do like Kendrick Perkins. But it seems like he unnecessarily goes after the Clippers at times, goes out of his way to take shots at them and to downplay the offseason they have had, to downplay specific players. He gives Zubac love. He gives Coach Lue love. Those are the 2 consistent things he says about the Clippers. But now we're going to get to CP3 and him leaving him out of his all-time top 10 point guard list. But I just wanted to contextualize this and his overall feelings towards the Clippers this offseason and really going back the last couple of years. Now, he can obviously just all of a sudden jump on the Clippers bandwagon. We've seen his takes go from one end of the spectrum to the other very quickly. I think he's also called them a scary team after what they did this offseason. So, it's a moving target with a lot of these guys and their takes. They can't keep track of them themselves. I guess I'll check out some of the comments in here. What do we got? Invite Perk on the podcast. I would invite him on. I like Kendrick Perkins. I like his style. I think, is he a Texas guy? I think he's funny. He gets it. He brings, while his analysis is lacking sometimes, especially when it comes to the Clippers, he's an entertaining guy. And that's what ESPN is looking for above everything else. So let's get to the CP3 part of this.
Do you happen to know how many times CP3 has changed teams, started a new season in his 21-year career with a new team?
5.
8.
Wow.
Yeah, this is going to be number 8 for CP. Although this one's
That's pretty shocking. This is the 8th time he's starting a season on a new team, CP3. But he's also played 21 seasons now. Is this his 21st coming up, or has he already played 21? You guys can get to me in the comments on that. But I clipped this part just to show this was a great graphic. Malik Andrews here putting this up on ESPN. The win percentage changed that first year with his new group. He's always a plus and adding more victories.
a little bit more, this is a little more of a homecoming, right? Each of the previous 7 teams, they all saw an increase in their win percentage in CP3's first season. They call it the CP effect. CP.
All right. Now we're going to hear from Kendrick Perkins. Do you guys know? Is it 20 that he just completed and he's going into his 21st season? Or is this his 22nd? Can't tell if they're counting it or not. Okay. Crux of the issue. Here we go. Kendrick Perkins on his list and why he left CP3 off of it.
Our friend Kendrick Perkins, he had some thoughts on where Chris ranks in terms of point guards. Here's what he had to say.
CP3 is the top 15 greatest point guard of all time. I do not have him in my top 10. I do not have him in my top 10. I don't have CP3 ranked above Russell Westbrook. Like, did CP3 do a lot
I'll have something to say about that.
of things, change the franchise, win a lot of games and things? Yes, absolutely. I would never take that away from him.
If you want more Kendrick Perkins, there's a 27-minute road trip in of Kendrick Perkins, no commercial breaks and no breaks, period. But Perk, I'm going to give you a chance to explain yourself here, sir, because I cannot get on board with this one, my friend.
Well, what is it to explain when you talk about the all-time greats, right? I mean, it's a toss-up if you want to throw in John Stockton when it comes down to all-time point guards, right? I think you got to have some type of, of validation to get in the top 10, right? In my top 10, I have John Stockton, I have Oscar Robertson, Magic Johnson, Steph Curry, Isaiah Thomas, Gary Payton, Steve Nash, Jason Kidd, Steph Curry, right? Bob Cousy. And when you look at 9 out of these 10, they either have a championship or they have multiple MVPs or MVP, except for John Stockton, but he's the all-time leader in assists. So I couldn't put CP3 above him, but
Okay, let's start with John Stockton. The main difference for me, and we'll get back to this video, the main difference for me between CP3 and John Stockton. Yes, John Stockton, all-time assist leader, all-time steals leader. Chris Paul is second in both those categories to him. And if I mess up any statistics here, guys, fact check me. Okay. But if you look up the amount of 30-point games that John Stockton had. Like, this is going to be shocking to you. And this is the differentiator. They both don't have a ring. Stockton got to the finals twice. He was consistently a playoff lowerer. He and Karl Malone. Look at their numbers, regular season versus playoffs. There's a reason they didn't win. It wasn't just MJ. There were plenty of years that Michael Jordan didn't get to the finals, and Utah still could have got there from the West and face a different opponent coming out of the East. That's lazy. I think a lot of their high pick and roll offense, and I love Jerry Sloan, but it got disrupted, and Stockton and Malone did not rise and meet the moment often enough. Stockton obviously had the game winner, I think, in 97 to get them to the finals against the Rockets. He definitely had clutch moments for sure, and had a lot of significant baskets and buckets in his career. But listen to this. Do you know how many 30-point games John Stockton had in his career? 11 total. 11 30-point games in his entire career. That's insane. What Chris Paul is able to do, not just with his playmaking, but with his individual offense, is just miles ahead of John Stockton. For instance, Chris Paul has 77 games in his career where he scored 30 or more. He is just a much more skilled individual scorer by a wide margin. While both of them are very close to one another in the assist to turnover game, Chris Paul also has the best assist to turnover ratio in NBA history. And it's right in front of John Stockton. CP3, I think, is just about 4 at a 4-to-1 ratio. John Stockton's at like 3.7 assists to each turnover. I'm taking Chris Paul. Stockton was very reliant on having Karl Malone out there. And look, we're nitpicking the greatest players of all time when you're talking about a top 10 list like this. I have the utmost respect for John Stockton's basketball career, and he was a killer at times. He got my Kings in 99 in the first round. He hit a clutch shot, I think, in game 4 to send it to game 5. He had some big moments. But 77 30-point games by Chris Paul to just 11 for John Stockton, he blows him out of the water when it comes to scoring appetite. And I think CP3 honestly was unselfish to a fault at times. Maybe John Stockton was too. I'm sure that can be argued. But CP3, while having 66 more 30-point games than John Stockton in his career, and I would still say, Chris Paul, I wish you looked for a shot more, because he's the more efficient player, one of the most efficient players in NBA history. I wish he looked for a shot more. You could argue, well, one of the reasons he's so efficient is he wouldn't force things or he wouldn't take as many bad shots. I don't know. He had some really unguardable moves, especially younger CP3 when he first came to the Clippers, his New Orleans days. He was so slippery and able to snake the defense, and the ability to just absolutely torture defenders with his ball handling and his quickness. And yes, smash the like and subscribe, please. But they're pretty even in a lot of areas. Stockton, okay. John Stockton, how many years did he play? Because it's got to be close between him and CP3. I know CP3 has played the most years of the point guard position in NBA history. John Stockton played 19 seasons. Let's see what Chris Paul is at. since I didn't see you guys interact with me here, maybe I missed it while I was chatting. But Chris Paul is heading into his 21st season. So he's played 2 more years. He also definitely, I'm guessing, missed more games than John Stockton. Let's just see total number of games. Forget years in the NBA. Let's look at games and minutes. That's how you can really see, okay, who's just a longevity merchant out there. So John Stockton's played 1,504 games. CP3, 1,354. So John Stockton's played 150 more games than CP3, even though Chris Paul is going into his 21st season. Let's look at total minutes played here. CP3 is at 45,000, just about 46,000 minutes played. John Stockton, okay, he's played almost 1,000 more minutes, like 1,200 more minutes than Chris Paul, about 1,100 actually. So that's part of what goes into having more assists, having more steals. What about assists per game? Stockton's at 10.5 for his career. CP3's at 9.2. Steals. CP3's at 2. Stockton's at 2.2. Who's playing heavier minutes, though? And how much is that influencing things? Stockton averaged 31.8 minutes per game. CP3's at 33.7. So that's a little bit interesting. But I don't think John Stockton, he was a solid defender, a feisty defender. But, okay, so he finished 8th one year in Defensive Player of the Year, 7th another year. All NBA defense, second team, 3, 4 times. Make it 5 times. He was all defensive second team. What about Chris Paul? He's first team 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. He is a better defender, regardless of even looking at those accolades stuff. I can tell you, better defender. John Stockton, not a bad defender, but CP3, for being smaller at his best, was really tough defensively. Yeah, if CP3 had a ring, it wouldn't even be a conversation. Now, John Stockton, people will say, well, same goes his way. But to me, the biggest difference is just scoring ability. Chris Paul is on another level there. Just look at 30 points games between them. Stockton, 11 total games of 30 points or more. CP3, 77. So I'm taking Chris Paul over John Stockton. Now, Maria in here is saying Stockton was a better leader. Like, I don't know how to quantify that, really. Chris Paul has been talked about as one of the best leaders ever. Maria's going off of the dream team. Okay. Chris Paul, is he born yet? He was. But you can't hold it against Chris Paul for not being on the dream team when he was probably like 6. Garrett says Stockton has an All-NBA appearance in 1999, averaging 11 and 7. If that doesn't show you the different eras, I don't know what does. Different eras is a part of this, but CP3's bag is just larger. The way he could create for others, just like Stockton could, but then for himself in ways Stockton could not, they're not the same. Fahad said, Adam, you lied to me. Happy Gilmore wasn't as bad as you made it out to be. It had some feel-good laughs. To each their own. Hey, if you had a good time watching it, I'm not going to hate on that. If you were able to enjoy it, good. Bonesaw said CP3 is top 10, second in assists, second in steals. Yes, he's second to John Stockton in both those categories. But again, this comes down to getting buckets, and Chris Paul is just miles better in that area than John Stockton. What is Stockton's, tell me his scoring go-to move? I can tell you Chris is getting to that right elbow. Stockton's scoring go-to move is running pick and roll and finding Malone. So I'm taking CP3 already over John Stockton on this list. Doesn't mean I wouldn't necessarily have John Stockton off of the top 10. There may be other guys I would take off here. So let's go back to Big Perk here on Clippers Talk and see where else he's going with this.
To get in the top 10, right? In my top 9, top 10, I have John Stockton, I have Oscar Robertson, Magic Johnson, Steph Curry, Isaiah Thomas, Gary Payton, Steve Nash, Jason Kidd, Steph Curry, right? Bob Cousy. And when you look at 9 out of these 10, they either have a championship or they have multiple MVPs or MVP, except for John Stockton, but he's the all-time leader in assists. So I couldn't put CP3 above him, but CP3 is in my top 15. I think he's in that rock. But
he's saying these guys all have a championship or an MVP, except for John Stockton. And that's part of his criteria here, but he's given Stockton the edge because he's first, even though he's played 1,100 more minutes than CP3. Even though he's played way more games than CP3, he's first in total steals and assists over CP3.
He's the all-time leader in assists. So I couldn't put CP3 above him, but CP3 is in my top 15. I think he's in that range of when you talk about a guy like Chauncey Billups, who just went to the Hall of Fame. When you look at a guy like Rajon Rondo, who might be knocking at the door of being in the Hall of Fame, that's why I put CP3 at.
CP3 and Rajon Rondo are just not the same. I know Rondo has 2 rings. Unless you ask Daryl Morey and the execs that he talks to about the NBA bubble ring that he got with the Lakers, and they're acting like that didn't count if you saw that story today. He's got at least 1. But here's the thing here. I guess I should start putting in the guys that are obvious for me on his point guard list. Magic Johnson's in. Steph Curry is in. Oscar Robertson is in for me because of the triple doubles and the championship. But obviously, I wasn't old enough to watch him. I'm going off of what greats say there and some of the video I've seen. And he won in 71 with Kareem in Milwaukee, a championship. So he's got some stats going for him. He also has the ring. Isaiah Thomas, yes. So there's 4 guys for me right there that I would put in front of Chris Paul. Isaiah Thomas is probably top 5 most underrated players in NBA history. He was 3-1 in the playoffs against MJ. Like, he went back-to-back, 89-90. He should have won in 88 against the Lakers and had maybe the greatest performance ever in NBA Finals history, or would have been talked about that way if they won in 88, because he rolled his ankle in game 6 and had how many points did Isaiah Thomas have in that fourth quarter? Ankle, game 6, I think it was. He had 25 points in a quarter in that game 6 in 88. And they got screwed in game 7 on a BS call with Lambier straight up against Kareem's skyhook. Look it up. They should have won in 88. They came back. They swept a beat-up Lakers team in 89. 88 that's a frustrating one. You go back and watch. Isaiah Thomas, though, definitely. So I got Magic, Steph, Oscar, Isaiah over CP3 right now. For reasons stated, I don't even need to talk about Steph or Magic. Come on, what are we doing here? They're top 2. Gary Payton is interesting to me. Gary Payton got his ring in 06 with the Miami Heat. Gary Payton is one of my all-time favorite players. And if you look at the numbers scoring-wise, they are comparable. His scoring averages with CP3. So it's not just, well, he has him on the defensive side because he won a Defensive Player of the Year. He's got more all-defensive first teams. He's the glove. He also has, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let me do this over again. He's got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 seasons averaging 20 or more. I'm going to go back to CP3 here. I felt like he sacrificed too much at times with his scoring because of how efficient he was out there. He was going too much point guard and not just getting buckets because it was really easy for him. CP3, believe it or not, only had 2 seasons where he scored average scoring 20 or more points. So I think you can reasonably make the argument that Gary Payton, while not as efficient of a scorer as CP3, different era, couldn't shoot the three-pointer. He was a 32% three-point guy. CP3's 37%. But I think you can make the argument because he's clearly a better defender. And his scoring averages are very close to Chris Paul's while having, he had many years averaging around 9 assists per game. That you got to give Gary Payton the edge because in 2006, he didn't just come along for the ride with the Miami Heat when they won over the Dallas Mavericks. He hit a really big shot. I believe it was against Detroit. Let me look this up. For Miami, remember they went down 2-0 in the finals. Ooh, this was in the finals that he hit that shot? It's 95 all, and Gary Payton, yes, it wasn't against Detroit in the Eastern Conference Finals. It was a long two-pointer inside the right arc. It was 95 all. He made it 97-95, Miami with 9 seconds left. That was a huge shot because they were down 0-2 in the series. That's how they won Game 3. They would go on to win 4 in a row and eventually win that series. Tell me the argument for how CP3 can take Gary Payton's spot. Payton has a ring. He won it at the age of 37, and he hit a big shot. He wasn't just along for the ride. He wasn't Mitch Richmond with the Lakers in 2002 or anything like that. He was playing. Wasn't a lead dog anymore, but he was a role player and a contributor. And then defensively, he's better. And offensively, while the three-point shooting isn't there, the efficiency isn't there with CP3, the scoring appetite was. I think I got to go Gary Payton over him, which would give me 5 players on this list already above him. Of course, I consider defense and Curry's standing, but the truth is the Golden State Warriors always had top defenses, even with Steph Curry not being great on that end. But you can look up mixtapes of Curry's defense, and it's not as bad as you think. And by the way, he may be the most important offensive player of the last 30 years with the way he revolutionized the game and the way all this spreading the floor and the way the game has changed. A lot of that is due to Steph Curry. He's the greatest shooter ever in the game of basketball, which involves shooting the ball. I think it's kind of a big trait. Like, not all skills are created equal. They aren't. People are just like, well, he checks this box, but he checks this box. It's like, you got to heavily weight being the greatest shooter ever over a lot of these other attributes. So yeah, Steph is, come on, what are we even talking about? Now, Steph had more of a scoring appetite. You can say, okay, he's not as much of the playmaker. He can play make. He's a great ball handler. He just looks for a shot more, and he changes the dimensions on the floor because of the spacing that he creates with his long 3-ball. Garrett said, Chris is a better point guard than Payton, I think. Better playmaker, leader, shooter, worse defender, although they both have 9 all-defensive selections. Yeah, but look at first teams, and Gary Payton has a defensive player of the year. He's not better. I watch Gary Payton plenty. CP3 is not a better defender than him. That's not close. The difference in defense is greater than probably the difference in offense. CP3 is a better shooter. But I think you have to give it's the edge. It's the edge that I'm giving Gary Payton. And maybe it's the ring in 06 that gets him over the hump. It's that simple, but I think that has to mean something. He wasn't coattailing it. He mattered to that Miami team. I thought it was Eastern Conference Finals. It was game 3 after being down 0-2. They go down 0-3. Nobody's coming back from that. That was a huge shot. It's very close, I think, but I got to give GP the edge. So where are we at here? I got Magic, Steph, Oscar, Isaiah, and Gary Payton. There's 5 guys on this list that I am putting ahead of Chris Paul. John Stockton, I'm not. They're similar in a lot of ways, but Chris Paul clears in a really big way, scoring. All right. Let's get to it here. Let's see what else. I want to see if Big Perk comments at all about Russell Westbrook. I think he just says triple doubles, but I just want to review this.
Either have a championship or they have multiple MVPs or MVP, except for John Stockton, but he's the all-time leader in assists. So I couldn't put CP3 above him, but CP3 is in my top 15. I think he's in that range of when you talk about a guy like Chauncey Billups, who just went to the Hall of Fame. When you look at a guy like Rajon Rondo, who
see, Chauncey Billups has the ring in 04, and maybe that's an argument to put him over CP3. But CP3 has had a much better individual career than Chauncey Billups. Billups, though, does have the finals MVP in 04 too, and really stepped up. And that was a defensive menace team, one of the best defenses I've ever seen with the Pistons. Like, he's not close on a lot of these categories. So how much do you weight that ring? Perk doesn't go deep enough into his list to his top 15 to say whether or not he has Chauncey over CP3. He says they're in that same area. He also said the same for Rondo. Rondo does have a ring in 08. He was on the Boston Tea Party 3-party. He was huge, don't get me wrong, but you put Chris Paul on that team, you think they're not winning a ring still? Of course they are.
who might be knocking at the door of being in the Hall of Fame. That's why I put CP3 at.
Last word on this.
But I thought championships matter.
So everyone on the panel, by the way, Mark Spears, Dave McMenamin, who I believe is married to Malika Andrews, they're both there. Everyone on the panel basically said, you're nuts, Big Perk, for not having Chris Paul as a top 10 guy. They didn't, however, say who they take out to put him in. But then he gets the last word here, Kendrick Perkins, to close out and make his closing argument.
Who might be knocking at the door of being in the Hall of Fame.
That's
why I put CP3 at.
Last word on this.
But I thought championships matter, and I thought MVPs matter, right? And when you look at my list, obviously you have Isaiah Thomas, who was playing in the era and won championships when he was competing against Bird, Magic, and Michael Jordan. Oscar Robertson, name speaks for itself. Russell Westbrook, a guy that averaged 4 triple-doubles, had 4 triple-double seasons throughout his career with a MVP. So, I mean, look, he's top 50 that averaged 4 triple-doubles, had 4 triple-doubles.
All right, so we're going to hit on Russell Westbrook next here.
Michael Jordan, Oscar Robertson, name speaks for itself. Russell Westbrook, a guy that averaged 4 triple-doubles, had 4 triple-double seasons throughout his career with a MVP. So, I mean, look.
All right, let's get to it. Russell Westbrook, to me, is a guy you can compare in the same era with CP3 that does different things out there that make him great. This comes about with what you value more. I think CP3 has less fatal flaws than Russ in this area. Chris Paul takes care of the basketball. Now, ironically, in a game against Russ in a meltdown in game 5, up by 7 with 47 seconds left or 49 seconds left in that game 5 in 2014 against OKC and Russell Westbrook. Chris Paul lost his composure and lost the basketball. Yes, that game still hurts. But overall in their careers, there is miles of difference between Chris Paul taking care of the basketball, having the best assist turnover ratio in NBA history, and Russell Westbrook being erratic, sloppy with the basketball, unpredictable, and just not valuing it. I value CP3's skill set more than Russ's in the triple doubles. CP3 also, even having said that low playoff moment, that's easily his lowest, is a much better playoff performer. If you look up the numbers, Chris Paul is meeting his regular season numbers in the playoffs, guys. He's a great playoff performer. He's had some low moments, and that has changed things or changed people's perception. But he actually averages, say, more points per game, about the same amount of assists, same amount of steals, same shooting percentages, just about. Like, he brings it in the playoffs. People don't want to believe that. The difference between him and Russ in the playoffs, Russ, despite what he did against the Clippers in the first round, is a playoff lower-er. He's been really, really bad. You look at regular season Russ. He's at 44% from the field, 30% from the outside. You look at Russ in the playoffs, he's at barely over 40% from the field, just under 30% from 3. It is not pretty, especially since he's been without Kevin Durant. He's also, yes, a much better shooter. Russell Westbrook, I think, on some teams might be a better option, but he is a ceiling lower-er. I don't think CP3 is. They both don't have a ring. They've both been to the finals once. They both have had some low playoff moments, of course, but Russell Westbrook consistently just is very up and down and mostly down with his playoff numbers. I mean, it's a chasm between those two in the playoffs. But I know a lot of people would just think, oh, CP3, what do you mean? Playoff choker. Not really. He's had a monumental collapse against OKC, and that kind of colors in the story for a lot of people with the rest of his playoff performances. But if you look at individual games and the individual numbers, no. Chris Paul has been a good playoff performer. Again, he's shooting 48% from the field in the playoffs, 37% from 3, getting 20 points per game. In the regular season, he's at 47% from the field and 37% from 3, just like he is in the playoffs. So he shoots it a little bit better. He scores 3 more points per game in the playoffs. Let's see. He's at 9.2 assists to 2.3 turnovers in the regular season. Let's see what the ratio is in the playoffs. I'm sure it's a little bit up from that. So it's 8.3 assists to, does it give me turnovers? Just gives me the turnover total. The numbers are very comparable and better in a lot of different areas for CP3 in the playoffs, where for Russell Westbrook, they pretty much all go down. And it's just his style of basketball, I don't think translates well to a playoff setting. But of course, he had his best shooting playoff series last year against the Clippers. Checking out the comment section here. Chris is shooting, and he's not a negative floor spacer out there like Russ. What does Russ have him in? Energy? How do you measure that? Like, on really bad teams that need a guy that can do a lot of different things, Russell Westbrook can really help them. But if I'm trying to win a championship, I'd much rather have Chris Paul say they both have failed. Phoenix with CP3 in the finals, they were up 2-0. Chris Paul had some bad moments, and it looked like he was just gassed by the end of it. But I think Chris Paul ultimately gives you a better shot to win it. Like if he was on OKC in 2016 or 2012, I think those OKC teams have a better chance to win with him running the show next to KD versus Russ. I do. Garrett said, the thing I value the most with Chris is how he makes teams better. That is such a rare trait to make every team you go to better and lead them to record-breaking seasons. I gave this stat a couple of weeks ago, but this is incredible. And this speaks to Chris Paul and how good he was in his prime. From 2009 to 2020, Chris Paul teams were 13 points per 100 possessions better with him on the court. 13 points per 100 possessions better from 2009 to 2020 with CP3 out there. Over a decade. You're not going to find more consistent winning advanced numbers than that from a guy over that long of a period. That is unbelievable. And yeah, CP3 maybe only doesn't have a ring because of what happened with the hamstring for the Houston Rockets in 2018 against Golden State. Maybe they win that series. He has had really bad injury luck, and that's another thing that is a difference maker between him and Russ. A lot of CP3's downfalls in the playoffs have been due to injuries, not because of lack of a clutch gene or him not rising to the moment. He's got multiple playoff game winners for the Clippers, against the Grizzlies, and of course against San Antonio. So it's clear to me CP3 is a better player all time than Russell Westbrook, who is on this list ahead of Chris Paul for Kendrick Perkins. The only thing he cites there is the triple doubles. How impactful were those to winning in the end? How often did those regular seasons from him and those numbers translate to winning in the playoffs? Because he's got some real bad playoff numbers, and for a while couldn't win a series without KD. Once he left, they finally won a series in the bubble with him next to James Harden in 2020. But it's just not pretty. I don't know if he plays a winning style of basketball. I'm going with Chris Paul there over Russ. No disrespect, Russ still might be on my all-time top 10 list. But so far, I've got 5 guys on this list ahead of Chris Paul. Magic Johnson, Steph Curry, Oscar Robertson, Isaiah Thomas, and Gary Payton. Not John Stockton, not Russell Westbrook. So there's already 2 spots open where I could slide in CP3 on this list. Now here's an interesting one, I think. Jason Kidd. Jason Kidd is similar to Stockton in a lot of ways, where he doesn't have the scoring appetite or the scoring prowess that CP3 had and has. He was more of that traditional point guard, but I want to see how many 30-point games he had in his career. Oh, come on, Gemini Google. How many 30-point games does Jason Kidd have? 38. 38 times he scored 30 points or more. Had a long NBA career. Remember, CP3's at 77. John Stockton's at 11 30-point games. That 30-point threshold is important to me. It just shows scoring ability. Jason Kidd is a really inefficient scorer. He had seasons where he shot it better from the outside. Jason Kidd, though, also a good defender, multiple all-defensive teams, like CP3 in that area, but we're talking about someone who only averaged 13 points per game, shot 40% from the field for his career, 35% from 3. Yes, he had years where he shot it better, especially near the end of his career. A couple of seasons in a row where he shot 40% with Dallas. Jason Kidd's case over CP3 really comes down to one playoff run in 2011 with Dallas. An improbable run in some ways, one of the toughest gauntlets to ever go through to win. I think it was the Blazers in the first round, but then the Lakers, they swept them in the second round, who were the defending champs, and then OKC, and then the Heatles. What Jason Kidd did in those playoffs defensively, he guarded Wade, he guarded Kobe a ton, he guarded LeBron some. He was special, and that was at the age of 37. He was incredible. And he knocked down big shots. That's the case for Jason Kidd, where he's no longer at the peak of his powers, but he was meaning more to that team than Gary Payton was to the 06 Heat in terms of how big their role was. Let me look up what he shot for Dallas. So in the first round, he shot 48% from three against Portland. Second round, he shot poorly from three, 28%, but then 39% against OKC. They beat him in 5 in the conference finals and 39% against Miami from 3. Low volume, but he stepped up. He was clutch. That run is the argument for Jason Kidd. You can argue he's a slightly better passer, or they're right in line. They're both two of the best passers ever. There's no way you can argue he's a better scorer than CP3. But can you argue that he was more clutch because of that 2011 run where it all came together? Better floor general, better leader? I don't know. I'm okay with someone giving Jason Kidd the edge because that 2011 Dallas team. And New Jersey, yeah, those teams went to back-to-back finals. But the truth is, in 02 and 03, with Byron Scott as their head coach, those teams aren't getting out of the West. I know they lost to San Antonio in 6 games, but then got swept by the Lakers. Like, they weren't the second best team. The Kings were. That championship was in the Western Conference Finals. So maybe they were the third best team at they were the third best team at best. I'm not giving a ton of credit. I'm giving some. He was great. Don't get me wrong. Where did he finish in the MVP? What was the highest he finished in the MVP? Because CP3 finished second in 2008. And I actually talked to Chris Paul on the phone that summer. Maybe it was the next summer, but he called into AM 570, who was doing an interview. I was the producer. And remember, he and Kobe were going head-to-head in that 07-08 season for the MVP award. And there was a game late in the season between the Hornets and the Lakers at Staples Center. And the Lakers went up big. They were up by 20. The Hornets stormed back, but they lost the game. Kobe had, I remember, a big transition dunk behind the back, threw it down, and it kind of cemented him as the MVP that season. I didn't think he was getting more out of his team than Chris Paul was out of his with the Hornets. And I told Chris Paul, I think you were the MVP that season on the phone. And he said, I appreciate that, man. So that was his time finishing second in MVP. Jason Kidd finished second in 01-02. Who was he second to that year? Was that Duncan? It was. So they both, at best, finished second in MVP voting. I think this is another one where, like Gary Payton, I'll give Jason Kidd a slight edge, but you could talk me into CP3 being better than Jason Kidd all time. But that 2011 run, memorable, crazy. And his defense was so good. I couldn't believe what he did against Wade and Kobe at times. Bigger defender. I would say overall better just because of his size than CP3 and because the guys he guarded because of his size in that playoff run at 37. All right. Next on the list. That's 6 guys I got in front of Chris Paul. Jason Kidd is the closest call for me. But I will value championship rings, not just because, not all rings are created equal. That ring, what he did during that run with Dallas, incredible. Here's one. Steve Nash. Well, we just talked about MVPs. Steve Nash has 2. That Phoenix Suns offense was revolutionizing things with D'Antoni in the early 2000s. Later on, Chris Paul would play for him with the Rockets. And Steve Nash went, back-to-back in 03 and 04? Steve Nash was the floor general for some of the best offenses ever. It was 05-06. Some thought Kobe should have won in 06. Then they played in the first round. The Lakers blew a 3-1 lead. Steve Nash won because he was obviously the most important piece on this team that won a ton of games. Without him, they're a completely different team, different offense. The case against Steve Nash in favor of Chris Paul would be defense. Steve Nash ain't got any all defensive teams, but he does have 2 MVPs. And he has a case that if they don't get screwed by cheap shot Bob, Robert Horry, in that series against San Antonio, what year was that? 2007? Suns, Spurs, 2007, where he gets a cheap shot on him, puts him into the broadcaster's table, I think. He might have broken his nose. Otherwise, the Suns would have won that series, and they would have faced a bad Cleveland team in the NBA Finals, and they would have beat them. Now, this was a semifinals game, so they still would have had to get through, I think, the Utah Jazz. They would have. That was, yes, the Jazz had beaten the Golden State Warriors, we believe, team in the second round. But in that semifinal series, that was basically, just like I mentioned, the Kings 0-2 Western Conference Finals against the Lakers. That was the real championship series. Those were the 2 best teams. The 2 best teams in 2007 were the Spurs and the Suns. And they played each other in the semifinals. And was it game 1 where the cheap shot came in? And the significance of this, now it might have been game 4. The significance of this was Amari Stoudemire comes off the bench, Boris Diaw comes off the bench, and David Stern went letter of the law during a kerfluffle, during a fight that was instigated by Robert Horry. Those guys have to be suspended the next game. The next game, I believe, was game 5. Let me check the numbers here. It was. And the Suns lost that game, the big swing game, with the series tied up 2 games apiece. That's the series right there. It's bullshit. Suns probably win the championship. Then we're not even having a debate here between Steve Nash and CP3. I think you still have an argument for Steve Nash because of the 2 MVPs being better, but the difference in defense is wider than the difference in offense between those 2. And I think Steve Nash did win those MVPs because he was just everything to those offenses. And it was 7 seconds or less, and it was new. And I'm not disparaging him. He was great. In fact, I'll say, because I think they would have won the championship in 2007, if not for cheap shot Bob, I'll say Steve Nash, I got above CP3. You combine, they would have won it, plus the 2 MVPs. The defense ain't great, but that Suns team, they were good enough defensively most of the time. Like, they were average, and their offense was so good that it was fine. They could have won the championship. The whole idea that, oh, you can't win with D'Antoni and stuff, they couldn't win because they got screwed against San Antonio. Like, look at the details. It's the same thing where I think Houston could have obviously won against Golden State in 2018 if CP3 doesn't get hurt. So does that level things out, even things out? CP3 wins if he doesn't. I think there's a better chance that the Suns win this series because they had home court and it was 2-2. Like, there was less of a difference between their two teams than the Golden State Warriors and Houston Rockets, because you can still say that Golden State Warriors team was so good, even if CP3 doesn't get hurt, they could have won that series. So I'm going to say yes, slight edge, slight edge, just like with Jason Kidd, slight edge, razor thin, Steve Nash above CP3. So what is that? 7 guys: Magic Johnson, Steph Curry, Oscar Robertson, Isaiah Thomas, Gary Payton, Jason Kidd, and Steve Nash. But I got CP3 over Stockton. I got CP3 over Russell Westbrook. And there's one more guy on the list to talk about. Bob Cousy. This is a tough one. There were 8 teams back when they had an 8-peat with the Boston Celtics in the 60s. I know Bob Cousy was great for his time. I also know I'm not turning this into a plumber's thing. I also know that if I drop CP3 into the 60s, he's a witch. They're going to try to burn him at the stake for some of the stuff he can do. Say, oh, they call travel all the time. I don't know. I've watched some of these older games. Yes, the hand had to be on top of the ball more. It's the dumbest hypothetical. It's stupid to compare eras. But I just know the game has come a long way to the point where I don't think this hesitation move by Bob Cousy is dropping a defender in today's game. I don't know if that's enough to drop a defender. Oh, stops. Oh, lost him. Where'd he go? It's really, really hard to compare eras that wide and that far apart. If you want to put Bob Cousy ahead of CP3 because of all the rings, when you had a 1 out of 8 chance winning every year because there were 8 teams versus 1 out of 30, I know that's not exactly how it works, but go ahead. Do what you want with Bob Cousy and CP3. I can see it both ways. I just know CP3 is infinitely more skilled, but does he get that skilled if it isn't for legends like Bob Cousy doing what he did for the game? It's too hard. It's too hard to analyze something like that. It's not worth it. And you end up looking like a hater or a bad person just for pointing out that guys today are obviously much more skilled. And they also had like 25 more possessions per game to accumulate stats back in the 60s. People don't want to talk about. So some of those stats are really inflated. Will Chamberlain's not averaging 50 and 25 anymore in today's NBA. He's not playing every minute of the game. Like, it's just very different. But I don't need that to make my argument. I don't need him to be better than Bob Cousy. I got him 8th or 9th on this list at worst. At worst, he's only behind Magic, Steph, Oscar, Isaiah, Gary Payton, Jason Kidd, Steve Nash, Bob Cousy. Do what you want with that one. At worst, he's 8th or 9th. He's definitely top 10. And you can make the argument he's better than Nash, Kidd, Gary Payton. I think there's real arguments to be made there. So, yeah, he's definitely top 10, Kendrick Perkins. And you're doing a little bit of hating here. You can make the argument for John Stockton, I guess, but I think it's pretty clearly in favor of Chris Paul. He's definitely top 10. There's no doubt. There's no doubt. Maybe there's something else going on with Kendrick Perkins and why he seems to be a Clippers hater at times. Maybe there's something from his past that happened that has him upset. And it all makes sense if you just think about a pretty famous play that Kendrick Perkins was on the wrong side of. Uh-oh.
Do you ever feel bad after a poster?
No.
What if a guy's like wife was there?
So? Shouldn't have been there.
Has someone ever cried?
I don't know, but Kendrick Perkins deleted his Twitter after I dunked on him. That's like, I think that should be on my resume. In the NBA playoff.
It's a physical game.
Could that be where all this stems from? I'm Adam Moslin. You've been listening